Panic and anxiety disorder is a disease which it is just the hardest thing to treat because there aren't outward signs of it, and there generally aren't chemical or blood tests or they can work up on you to find something floating in your system. And it is one of those things that until very recently doctors would say was just all in your head. And it's not just doctors that would say that. Family members and friends can be some of the cruelest people when you're dealing with panic and anxiety. I saw up close and personal a very sad set of circumstances with my sister. She began to have panic and anxiety attacks back in the mid-'80s. And of course, in the mid-'80s, 30 years ago almost, it wasn't like it is today. So you couldn't just call someone up and tell them about your panic attacks. You couldn't call into work and saying, I'm going to be late, I'm having an anxiety attack or a meltdown of some sort. They'd say you were crazy. When in fact, what you listen to me, you know this, you know that panic and anxiety has nothing to do with your intelligence. In fact, panic and anxiety disorders are generally suffered by people who are very high intelligence, very high functioning. But 25, 30 years ago, if you talked about panic and anxiety, if anyone even knew what you're talking about, they'd come down on the side of you being just plain nuts. Or if you weren't showing up to work on time or at all, you were just lazy. Or if you didn't end up at a party or some social function, you were just being antisocial. And the stigma back in the 80s made it very difficult for people to either understand it or know about it, and even if they did, have any sympathy at all for what you're going through. And again, people that you're closest to could be some of the cruelest in those relationships. My sister, for example, was having a very difficult time, and not many of us knew about it for all the reasons I just mentioned. And the ones that did were dismissive, myself included. I'm not proud of telling you that. But one of the most dismissive was my uncle, who would sometimes just outright, and I don't want to use the language he used because I don't know what your sensibilities are, so I'll keep this kind of G-rated. My uncle would say, listen, that is just nonsense. And in fact, my sister worked for my uncle. He owned a restaurant, and my sister worked for him, and there'd be times when she couldn't show up to work or wouldn't show up to work or whatever. And he would say, that is just pure poppycock. Again, I'm paraphrasing here. And it was very, very devastating to my sister, who was trying to reach out and explain what she was going through. But here is, and if you have ever gone through panic and anxiety, what I'm going to say next, you would like to reach through your computer, through the speakers, you would like to shake my hand when I tell you what I'm getting ready to say. My sister would say, I hope you never go through what I'm going through, to my uncle. She would say it to anybody. She'd say, I hope you never go through this. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemies. And even if people were coming down on her or giving her a hard time or not understanding, very plainly, very resolutely, she'd say, you don't have any idea what you're talking about. If you did, you wouldn't say these things. And I hope you never go through this. Now, the insidious thing about anxiety is sometimes it runs in families, as you know. If you don't know, if you have a big enough family, do a little research, you'll find out it runs in families. One day, my uncle was in the dentist chair, had to go through a procedure. And as he's in the chair, as he tells the story, he began to get this feeling in his stomach. And then this feeling that he was having a hard time breathing, and this feeling like he just had to get out of the chair. And he had never experienced a panic or an anxiety attack before he was in that dentist chair. Now listen, some of you have dealt with this long enough, you may not even remember all the places you've felt it, but I bet you remember the first place you felt it. And can you imagine what it would have been like to have been in a dentist chair and have that be your first experience and think you're going crazy and you're coming unglued and your skin, as he puts it, is just crawling and you feel like you can't breathe and your heart is racing and you're looking around and you feel like the walls are caving in and you feel like you're getting tunnel vision and you feel like literally any moment you could black out or fall over and no one understands and no one would listen and your head is ringing and you can't think straight and you're going a mile a minute. Imagine that in a dentist chair. With just that thing around your neck, realizing that bib, and realizing that just taking that bib off, they'll think you're nuts. And as they got that thing in your mouth and the water is swishing around and you're thinking about the procedure and how long it's going to take, and you realize once they start, they won't be able to stop. And if they end up having to pull a tooth, they can't stop in the middle of pulling a tooth, and that makes your panic and your anxiety get worse, and you're sitting there hyperventilating. And finally, you just look at the nurse, and you look up and you say, I've got to get out of here. And they look at you like you're nuts and you're crazy. That was when my uncle had his first panic attack. Not his last, but his first. And hearing him tell me that story years later, crying to me, and how he went to my sister and asked for forgiveness, was one of the most heartbreaking and yet gratifying moments I've ever lived through. Not that I wanted him to experience that, and not because I wanted him to have any payback, but so that someone else in my family would understand. So my sister would have someone else who knew where she was coming from, an ally. Where you are right now, you may be somebody who is going through panic and anxiety and you think you're alone, and you're not. And you may have folks in your life who are dismissive and they say they don't understand, but you're listening right now to a voice of someone who does understand. You're listening to the voice of someone now who knows what you're going through and how hard it is. Please, there's a link somewhere on this page. Click it, get more information about a program that could help you. If you're watching this video and it's on YouTube or someplace else, click the link in the more information section and get more information and get started. Don't wait another day. Don't wait another minute. And forgive those folks around you who don't know what they're doing, and get the help that you need, regardless of what the folks around you say you can and can't do. Take a moment right now. Click the link. Get more information and get started on a different path. I believe you can. No matter what anyone else says, I believe you can. I wish you all the best. Good luck and God bless you.